Let's talk to Rakib Ehsan, who is, of course, political commentator on the same subject. Rakib, a very good morning to you.
Morning, Mike. How are you?
Yeah, very well indeed. Good to talk to you. This reform story, as we were just saying, doesn't appear to be moving the dial very much in terms of reform voters. Most reform voters that we're hearing from, certainly, are saying, you know, either one, it's a stitch-up by Channel 4, two, every party's got, you know, rogue characters in it, and that's certainly true, and three, we're going to vote for reform anyway.
Well, firstly, I'd make the points that the comments which emerged from this undercover investigation by Channel 4 into Reform's campaign in Clacton, the racist comments are abhorrent, as were the comments which essentially provided the suggestion that young army recruits should shoot illegal migrants on the beach. Now, of course, that's incitement to violence. Of course, we would condemn these comments, absolutely. The point I'd make here, though, is that if you look in Clacton, we have a Labour candidate there in Jovan Owusu-Nepal, who reportedly on social media said that his favourite drink was white people's tears.
Yes.
And Mike, I just prefer a refreshing glass of soda lime, to be honest. Now, and another point that I'd make is that Nigel Farage, he condemned the comments which emerged from the investigation. But he did also raise the comments which were made by that Labour candidate to Channel 4, and Channel 4 didn't show much of an interest in reporting those comments. And the point that I made on Twitter, and of course these comments are to be condemned, but let's be absolutely clear here. The idea that discriminatory attitudes and behaviours towards Rishi Sunak are the preserve of white British Reform UK campaigners in coastal Essex is for the birds. If you were to come to my hometown of Luton, and if you were to ask Muslim elders in my local community how they felt about a Hindu prime minister and a Buddhist former home secretary unashamedly siding with Israel over Gaza, you would get some very tasty responses, Mike.
Right.
Let's be very
clear
about that. I'm sure
you would, and I'm not going to hold my breath and wait for Channel 4's investigation of some of those Green Party councillors that got elected over the May local elections. You know, because they were shouting, you know, we won for Gaza and Allahu Akbar. So I'm sure they would have some pretty tasty things to say, not least about homosexuality and about you know, queers for Palestine, all the rest of it.
Oh, absolutely. And another thing that emerged from this Channel 4 undercover investigation was a Reform UK campaigner talking about pride flags being plastered on police cars.
Yeah.
Mike, I don't agree with that either, to be honest. I don't think that kind of LGBT activism should have any place in our police forces. And if I'm being absolutely blunt, forgive me for being a social conservative, but I think there's a great deal of moral degeneracy in the LGBT movement in the UK. Is it controversial to say that? I don't think so.
I don't think it's controversial to say it at all, but the way that it was said in that video that was recorded was less eloquent than that, and certainly was something that you wouldn't want to say in public, and you wouldn't want to be caught saying in public. And George Jones, regardless of what happens with the other guy, Andrew Parker, George Jones is a reasonably close associate of the leadership of Reform, and he's been a member of the Brexit Party and UKIP for a very long time.
No, absolutely. And I think that in terms of the comments that were raised, this was always the risk, unfortunately, that if you call a snap election very abruptly, as the Prime Minister did, and I think the main issue here is that Reform UK has problem with a certain number of its parliamentary candidates. Some have suggested that Diane Abbott should be deported. Others have suggested that Jewish people are agitating for the importation of third world Muslims into the UK. So it's very clear that Reform UK, that there are issues there. I would simply make the point that if you were to conduct undercover investigations into a variety of political groups in the UK, and especially looking at their views towards the Prime Minister, you would discover bigoted attitudes towards him. There's no two ways about that.
No, absolutely. Rakib, good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. We've got to run. Rakib Ehsan, political commentator there, with his take on where those views come from and who has them, because there's an awful lot of people that do, whether you like it or not.